What is good, Mexit planners? So each month I spend over 50,000 pesos on my rent, my household maintenance, and my childcare services. And that is in cash money, which means I need to have at least 50,000 pesos on hand at the first of the month every month. If you want to know more about my full budget for a family of 4, check out the video that I'm going to link to in the description. But for over 2 years, I've used my Wise app WorldPay card to withdraw those pesos from an ATM. Now, many of you have heard me talk about the advantages of using the Wise app and the WorldPay card to achieve the best exchange rate. How I used the Wise card was I would transfer money from my US bank account into the Wise app, and then when the exchange rate was favorable for me based on my Wise alerts that I received, I would then exchange those dollars for pesos at a very favorable rate. Now, at this point, I could go and use my Wise Green WorldPay card, which is an actual debit card, at any local ATM. Most of the time, I would use that Wise WorldPay card at the Banorte ATMs, which allowed for between 18 to 20,000 pesos withdrawals at one time. This was good for up to $4,000 US every single month. But in order to get $4,000 each month, in pesos, which is about 80,000 pesos, that would generally require me to make 4 to 5 trips to the ATM machine. And only the first $200 of that $4,000 was eligible for no fees by Wise. The other $3,800 was obviously incurred ATM fees by Wise and the local ATM vendor. So back in August, I decided to open a bank account for 3 main reasons. The first was to get a Mexican debit card so I didn't have to rely solely on my Wise WorldPay card. The second one was to eliminate the withdrawal fees that I received every time I went to the bank after the initial $200 using my Wise WorldPay card. And the third was to build my Mexican credit. So today we're going to focus on the third point, which is why you would want to build credit here in Mexico. Be sure to stay to the end because I'm going to share with you the interest rate on my new Mexican credit card and the fees associated with it. Let's get it. So let me explain why you might want Mexican credit. When you first move to Mexico, your US credit history has 0 bearings on your purchasing power here in Mexico. You either have to come with a bunch of cash to buy things or use your US or Canadian issued credit cards here in Mexico. Now, when you use your US or Canadian issued credit cards here in Mexico, most, but not all, will incur international transaction fees as well as a conversion rate from going from dollars to pesos. So when you use your US credit card, you're incurring additional fees for using that internationally, unless you have like a Capital One card or Charles Schwab, which are some of the better cards that don't charge international fees. There's some businesses and local websites that don't work well with US credit card. 2 websites that don't work well with US credit cards are the Audio Bus Service and Aeromexico. I've had a number of issues using my US Visa and MasterCard with those services. Furthermore, things like financing housing and or buying a car, those things are generally done in cash. Most homes are paid for in cash here in Mexico, so if you plan to buy a house, you'll need to bring either a bag of money or do a big bank transfer from your US bank account into a Mexican bank account. And generally that's tough to do because of the amount of money, and it may require several days to kind of complete that type of transaction. This month, I decided to go to the bank and do a withdrawal because I was tired of doing multiple ATM runs every month to take out the over 50,000 pesos that I needed in order to pay for my services, as I said at the beginning of the video. So this was a relatively easy process. I simply went into the bank. I told the lady at the front door what I wanted in Spanish. Me gustaría retirar efectivo de mi cuenta. She asked for my debit card, in which she swiped it in a machine that she had at the front door. She issued me a ticket, and off I went to the teller window. Now the first teller didn't have the amount of cash that I needed, so he directed me to the second teller. The second teller didn't have the amount of cash, so he directed me to the third teller. When I got to the third teller, I told her the amount I needed. She said, no problem. She had it in her drawer and she began to process the transaction. In order to process the transaction, she simply needed my debit card, which I gave her my debit card. I gave her a form of ID, which was my permanent residency card. And then she went ahead and started processing the cash transaction. She needed to get approval because of the amount. And so she got approval. She came back. And when she came back, she asked me if I wanted to apply for a credit card. I said, you know what? I don't think I qualify for a credit card, but if it won't take too long, for sure, let's do it. After she explained to me about the credit card, she handed me 2 big stacks of 500 peso bills and 200 peso bills, which she didn't count, which I thought was a little bit odd considering the fact that I don't know how much this big old stack of pesos is. So I basically did not see any place like a safe room or a place to count. So I essentially had to wait until I got home to count the money to make sure that it was all there, which it was. The other big score that I had at the teller window was I was able to get 1,000 pesos in 20 peso notes, which was a huge come up because it's so difficult to get change here at stores. So thank you, Global Adventurer, for that huge tip. I appreciate you, bruh. Thanks for looking out. So after I got the money from the teller, I went to the banker's desk in the back. Now, this only took maybe 15, 20 minutes to process. She needed my account information, which we got from the application. She needed my fingerprint, I guess, to verify my identity. And then she had me sign my signature on the digital keypad a couple of times for the application process. And boom, we were done. It took about 15 to 20 minutes to process the application. But she told me she didn't get an immediate approval and that she would call me in a couple of hours once she had that approval. So off I went to my house, no worries. And then a couple of hours later, while I was at home, the phone rang and the young lady told me that everything was taken care of. We got an approval and it was after 5 o'clock, so she couldn't issue the card that day. But if I would come back the next day, she would get me the card, which we set up an appointment to do so after I got out of Spanish class, and off I went. So I returned to the bank the next day and it took about an additional 20 minutes to process everything. Again, she needed my account information, which she was able to get from the app. She needed my fingerprint, again, to verify that I am still the same person who owns the account. But 15 minutes after walking into the bank the second day, everything was set. I had a card. She issued me a credit card. From August of 2021, when I opened the account, to January of 2022 was all the time that needed to occur for me to, I guess, actually start my Mexican credit history here. So she handed me an envelope with this credit card. I then had to go back to the teller, and the teller needed to activate the card. So we put the card in the machine, we took it out, then we put in my debit card in order to activate the PIN on this card that she had just issued to me. Now they told me that once I got it activated at the teller window, I then had to go to the ATM machine and change the PIN number if I wanted to. So I did. I went to the ATM machine, followed the prompts, changed the PIN, and everything was smooth. I actually was able to verify that the PIN was working before I left. I was in and out of the bank in less than 25 minutes from the time I walked in on the second day to the time I walked out with my credit card. So there are a couple of things that I noticed about this credit card that I thought were very interesting. One, the amount of credit available to me on this card is very, very low, a couple $100, right? But it's very similar to what happens when you start your credit history in the United States when you're like 18 years old. They don't give you $50,000 out of the gate. You get like a $500 credit card or a $1,000 credit card or what have you. So no big surprise, but that's what they started me with here, which I thought was pretty funny. The second thing is that the card has an annual fee of almost 700 pesos, which could be broken up into 3 payments if you'd like. 700 pesos is roughly $35 US at a 20-to-1 exchange rate. So You could break that up over 3 months if you want, or you can just pay the entire 700 pesos at one time, and that is the annual fee for the credit card. One of the more interesting features of this card is that some of the stores will offer you 0% interest for, say, 6 months if you pay with a particular bank card. So this particular bank offers, has a wide variety of partners that they work with, I guess. And if you go to some of the stores, they may offer you 0% interest on some of your purchases. Now, here's where things got really interesting. If you do not pay off your balance, the annual interest rate of this card is 78.8%. Nah, bro. Let me say that again. It's 78.8%. That's a no-go. I will still use the card because there's never going to be a time where I carry a balance on this card. And again, it's simply just to build this credit history in the event that I want to buy a brand new Tesla or something down the line, right? But, I'm better off using my low interest cards from the States. Anyway, that is the story of getting Mexican credit here. I was advised a while ago to open a bank account, and 3 to 6 months later, which it looks like that's absolutely the case, I would be able to start building that Mexican credit. So if you want to do the same thing, just in case you want to have Mexican credit, this is the route I would suggest that you go. So if you want to know more about banking, how I use the Wise card to transfer money from my US accounts to my Mexican bank accounts, or how I use power tips on how to get exchange rate alerts so you get the best rate, check out the videos over here. Until next time, this has been MexitPlans Monty. I'm out.